another episode of Crypto with English. I'd like to warmly welcome today the founder of the Hardon Network, Shamil Khalilov, founder and blockchain engineer. And we're going to cover a more esoteric area of DeFi and blockchain, generally speaking, wrapped assets and wrapped tokens. Now, for many of you out there, I'm sure you may have seen them on various exchanges, wrapped Ethereum, wrapped Bitcoin, but it didn't seem to get a lot of attention or visibility. However, there is a very important, very significant aspect to these wrapped assets, especially as to the overall, you could say, blockchain ecosystem. And today we have Shamil to join us, a very experienced blockchain engineer and programmer, to really unpack a lot of this subject matter. So, Shamil, again, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me today. Talk a little bit more about your background, and then we're going to get into the weeds about wrap tokens.
Yes. Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm glad to see everyone who's interested in this particular theme called wrapped assets. At the beginning, it should be said that wrapped assets basically they have the beginning. They started to appear after the MakerDAO released the wrapped Ethereum, and it was the transparent smart contract that you love that allowed you to deposit ETH and get ERC20 wrapped Ethereum back. Particularly speaking, people there is slight differentiation between wrapped assets and like some of the tokens that are meant to not to be wrapped, but to represent like some financial incentive behind it. For instance, I have an interesting bearing token that represents your position. If you borrow asset, you also have some wrapped asset back. Basically, wrapped assets, the main distinction between the similarity between the wrapped assets and like interest bearing assets, for instance, is that they have to maintain one-on-one price.
Got it.
And for instance, there are different kind of wrapped assets. Talking about Solana, we can mention like Lido staked Sol and other ones, but some of them they are like they represent the position, and they have to grow for a distinct percent every day because they represent the staking mechanism under the hood. Basically, it's just like the design of the staking protocol. There are contracts that allow you to maintain the staking position internally, and for instance, there are like algorithms like allow you to maintain position via the price. Like you deposit your soul, you get Lido stake soul back, and every day it grows, and it represents your staking position. Also, wrapped assets they imply a very important influence on trading because you can increase volume, and it basically allows you to triple your or double your TVL of your protocol. For instance, there
Right.
are different kind of like algorithmic stable coins that represent such approach. For instance, even the DAI has like 50% of collateral. If I'm not mistaken, it's USDC, and basically it's not called wrapped asset, but the process of uh, collateral it's is very important for wrapped asset. It cannot be a wrapped asset between some token behind it because we wrap something.
Right.
Also, it's important to mention the aspect of the depths that use wrapped assets. Mostly, it's used by the bridges because you have like wrapped version, for instance. Mostly well known is wormhole wrapped assets, and a lot of action happened when, for instance, underlying token ETH it faces a strict growth or plummet of value. Wrapped asset has to follow it, and that's why I have a lot of trade activity, and it basically allows to boost in natural way. It allows to boost the volume of the token. So yeah, it's
Interesting.
this is the
So if
way it
we're
is.
so if we're to break it down, so a wrapped asset really has two parts to it. There's two components to it. So
Yes,
you have, I guess you could say, the underlying asset, which
yes.
operates as collateral. Correct.
It's mostly for wrapped versions, yes. But in cases like Aave, it's not like it's basically it's just the bonding, like because we
Right.
have wrapped asset is only it can be considered wrapped because if it maintains price one on one.
Right.
But other cases, it's in terminology of the DApp, the decentralized application, it cannot be called wrapped asset. So it has to be one on one price for wrapped asset.
Right. So, for instance, so if we talk about wrapped Bitcoin, and correct me if I'm wrong. So, this is essentially a Ethereum token that derives its value from Bitcoin, or I guess you could say it's a Bitcoin token on like an EVM, on the Ethereum virtual machine, or some sort of Ethereum network. Is that
Yeah,
more or less
it's very close to truth. The point you're talking about is that basically the algorithm, the approach to it is the same as with the wrapped Ethereum. Basically, the trustless approach, like the way we want things to be trusted in our crypto world, it's all maintained via different like contracts. If you want to make it cross chain, in
sure?
the case of wrapped BTC, if I'm not mistaken, it's backed by smart contract bridge, and you have like the part on in BTC network that allows you to deposit bitcoins. And for instance, Rand Bridge, they also have route BTC, and but basically in bridge world, it's all about the one algorithm. So you
Right.
cannot create something unique there because you have to lock some tokens on origin place or origin contract or deposit address if it's not smart contract enabled network like Bitcoin is. Like you have deposit address, and
Right.
it's all maintained by microservers that gives you an address. You deposit BTC, your BTC is there, and the contract mints on destination chain wherever you like.
Got it. And to, let's say, the average crypto, you could say, investor, why should the average crypto investor educate themselves about wrapped assets, whether it's, wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped Ethereum, or anything else? Why is it very important for, let's say, that crypto investor to know about it?
Because the main talking about your question, is very important that you asked it, because the investor the investor has two goals basically. uh, in order, we can say that first of all he wants to make money, and the second, he wants to save them.
That's a
uh,
good way of putting it.
Wrapped assets, they have one very big con, is that you can lose money because for instance, it's all tied to liquidity in if we talk about wrapped
Right.
assets. For instance, uh, I will partially mention the case of Luna, because it's very important what happened behind the
Oh,
scenes.
yeah.
Because people did arbitrage manually without any bots. So they basically bridged assets between wormhole. You didn't you were unable to do it via centralized exchanges because the withdrawals were disabled, and basically the bridge was operating, and you could sell on EVM or buy on Terra, and basically it was one way loop. And what's more important to mention here is, in case of bridges, if you, for instance, you buy Sol on Solana, you bridge it back to Ethereum. If the bridge you bridge it back via has it has zero liquidity, you will not be able to like to sell this token, and you will have like your funds will be like zero if you do this. So
Right.
that's why you should not maintain a position in wrapped assets, because it may be risky. And more importantly, uh, talking about the second case, when like all the the majority of scams happen on uh, Ethereum Ethereum blockchain. If when you suddenly approve a large amount of tokens to some shady smart contract, if you have ERC20 version, which is compatible to wrapped asset, you may lose your tokens. But if you
Right.
have like straight ETH, you are safe. So you should understand that wrapped asset is the workaround for interacting with some application. So the main goal was for Ethereum to be traded somewhere on like different dexes like Uniswap, etc.
Got it.
So particularly it's just about a bit risky but a bit more powerful.
Right.
In a nutshell, if the crypto user and investor understands how it works, it will be crucial benefit for him.
Got it. So, like in other words, it's kind of like it's almost very modular, and I don't know if I'm necessarily using the right word, but you can essentially take your crypto token or your crypto asset and essentially use it in different worlds. Essentially, in worlds, I would mean like let's say different blockchains. So, for instance, using a Bitcoin within Ethereum, for instance, that would be like a wrapped asset to, I think, the understanding of many.
Yes, yes, and you're talking about the lending approach where you have like you have the collateral of ETH or Bitcoin or whatever, and you borrow some funds,
Right.
and it allows you to hedge like the speed of the speed of growth, like between two tokens. Basically, the token that goes up in value, you think it will go up in value, you can use it as collateral, and you can borrow some stable coins. And this is where you can utilize the wrapped assets. But in case of Aave, you cannot we have a lot of wrapped assets, and the Aave has only like permission pools, and you cannot do you're unable to do things like depositing any collateral, because the asset has to be verified in terms of the fact that you cannot pour the liquidity in an asset that has like shady value.
Right.
And if you do this, a huge amount of uh, traders in crypto world, they will short it, and it's just money down the drain. So
And you took the words right out of my mouth. So you know, as time goes on, I've seen wrapped assets appearing on more and more different exchanges. So my question is, isn't I guess you could say wrapped assets. Isn't this something that's a bit more appropriate for professional traders? If you want to talk about things like, hedging and, shorting and, using, leverage and things like that, I can't see, I can't imagine, let's say, an average crypto buyer buying a wrapped asset and either knowing how to use it properly or protect their liquidity, because it seems like it seems like a very type of, I guess you could say, it's a very sensitive, but it's also almost a very explosive, or it could be an explosive type of tool you can use if you know how to use it.
yeah, your question is very great, and it covers a lot of like important topics that I will mention right now.
Sure. Please do it.
Basically, year after year, if we compare the crypto world to like financial markets, we see that the steady growth, like it has the power of like 5 times more fast. And talking about this, like majority of exchanges, like the FTX was the first in this scene, and in case of FTX, they managed to announce like different news where they have like they allowed to for USDT, for instance, to be deposited from different chains. And
Right.
in this case, they like push the boundaries. in terms of the fact that the user has the ability to operate on different networks. And
Right.
in this scenario, USDT is not called a wrapped asset, but they have like SPL20, SPL standard for USDT, and they have URC20 standard and TRC20 standard. And basically, nobody says that USDT is cross-chain in terms of like they do not market it like that. But more importantly, technically, it has the ability to it's all on all chains, and that's why a crypto user has to learn from these features, and we need to make people more interested in this, because it's better for our assets to be diversified, and in this case it goes one level up because you have like the same token but on different chains, and it allows you to, for instance, like I have Sol Solana token. I can what should I do? I can bridge it like 50% to Ethereum and like leave 50% on Solana network. And if user wants to learn, he has to like utilize these things, and other exchanges will follow these things. Like if the major exchanges like FTX, they allow the token to be deposited from different chains, it just make more utility to it. And I think every token, like if we talk about 2020, not a lot of projects were cross chain,
Right.
but I think in future it will be like the one of the requirements, like
Right.
to
Yeah.
become on.
And and if I can get your opinion on this, wrapped assets, do you think it will be more of a benefit for cryptocurrency industry, or do you think it will be more of a danger? Because my feeling is this: I think if you have like a group of very, very sophisticated traders who understand, let's say, the mechanics of shorting and leverage, they could cause real kind of, roller coaster rides in the market, so to say. And, for people who are just casual investors, they might just lose their money against, let's say, the more sophisticated trader who knows wrapped assets and knows how to essentially knows when to trade, knows when to dump it, knows how to, knows the right timing for shorting and things like that. This is, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but the question does come into my head, nevertheless. Kind of wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I think it's more of a danger at the moment, because if you take for last year all the majority of the hacks that happened, like all the insecurities,
Oh, yeah.
like wormhole was hacked because of the wrapped asset on Solana, because the hacker
Oh,
minted like
yeah. That's right.
100%, 100,000 of like wrapped Ethereum and bridged it back. And the the point I'm making here is that, for instance, we have one circle. Let's say it's the risks of the smart contract, and we have the second circle is like the risks of the origin asset
Okay.
that we have. And if we draw a third circle called wrapped asset, it has both risks, like the risk of the decentralized application, because we have wrapped asset because we want to make it into, we want to have interaction with the application, and the underlying asset maintains like the value. And if the developer makes some bug or like some
Oh,
mistake in
yeah. That's a
code,
good point. Right.
we'll have like all the wrapped asset, they will face risk because they are the part of application. And before we, like we have right now the audits of smart contracts and wrapped assets as well, because basically wrapped assets have like some behavioral changes underneath it. For instance, uh, they all conform to ERC20 standard. If we talk about EVM case, particularly, we need audits for wrapped assets if we make audits for application. I mean, it's the same part of the application, and without this, it's hard to make change in future, because we cannot go forward without like solid structure under the hood. But in case of Solana, for instance, uh, we have like SPL token under the hood, and it's more of a safe ecosystem there, because if you have wrapped asset on Solana, it has the same binary code, like this SPL token program underneath it. But in EVM, it's the copy, and it's more or less vulnerable on EVMs rather than on Solana. So I think only audits and like precise approach can make things more secure.
Very good point. And something I wanted to ask you as well. So these wrapped assets are made using the Ethereum ERC20 standard, correct? For the most part.
It's If we talk about the ecosystem of Ethereum, yes, and EVMs as well.
And
They
ERC,
all,
yes,
yeah, the ERC20 standard, it has like a couple of requirements, like you need to have certain functions in the
right,
app in order to be. It has to be. It's like the generic template. If you want your token
right.
to be
That's a good way to
tradable
put it.
on Uniswap on any permissionless protocol, you have to make it conform to ERC20. But the behavioral approach, like how you implement these functions, it makes a lot of sense. And some tokens, they are uh, only issued via one smart contract, and
Right.
for instance, staking protocols, they use it to represent the position. And Ethereum, I think, like the most vulnerable case in this situation.
Got it. And just to make sure, the ERC20, that's the older Ethereum standard, right?
It's how we can. It's one of the first standards, and
Right.
it will not change, I think, in future.
But I was going
It,
to ask, is there another Ethereum standard or later Ethereum standard that might be better for wrapped coins and wrapped assets?
I think if we fast forward back like 5 years ago, uh, all this happened due to incentives in open source, and like the authors behind the ERC20 are Open Zeppelin, and they are also authors of the NFT standard ERC721,
Right.
and I think it's all about, we have a huge ecosystem right now. Like MetaMask has 40 million users.
Right.
It's about the same as like the population of like average Europe country, and I think it's the choice and the decision we want to make here relies on huge amount of people, and I think if we have some proposal the people can vote on, we can move in any direction. And I think it's about overkill right now to do it, because at the moment the generic approach we have right now, like we have one standard for ERC20, I think it's more or less enough. And we can look into staking approach, like the staking mechanisms is far older than wrapped assets, and I think we don't have it like standardized right now. And I think what pushes us to standardization is like the amount of problems we face. Like for instance, we have Chainlink, they have like standardized approach to of pushing data, and
Right.
if the ecosystem requires it, and a lot of people face issue, we'll have first attempts of doing it. But I think right now is a bit of overkill for people.
And you raised some very, very good points there. And there seems to be a pattern. It seems like wrapped assets had some sort of role in a lot of, you could say, problems, whether it's maybe hacks, vulnerabilities, rug pulls. Why isn't, you could say, the news? Why isn't the coverage on wrapped assets and explaining? Because let's say if you hear about Luna, you hear about something else, you don't you don't hear, or you don't essentially receive an explanation, really, of how the wrapped assets really caused, or at least kind of, allowed, a lot of these problems. Like, for me, looking at wrapped assets and now talking about it with you, I would think if you're in this industry, you should know about this and you should start understanding it. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think your point is important in terms of the fact that we need to educate users, first of all, on how to use certain protocols. Because if we maintain the opinion that the wrapped asset are the parts of the some of the decentralized applications, we are unable to split them in terms of the fact that we have to educate users in an example. Like,
Right,
you have why you have wrapped asset, because you made some actions and you interacted with some application, you traded some tokens, you deposited some collateral, and like, we already have some success in this picture. We have like Finematics YouTube channel that covers all the aspects. Really good guy that explains like complex things in a complex technical things in a simple way. uh, I recommend looking one of the one of the first of his videos are about the Uniswap V2 and V1 differentiations, and we need to like burst interest into this. And I think the developers, the growth of the developer ecosystem, may help to achieve that, because a certain user, he does not think it's worth like learning this stuff, because I have Ethereum, I don't need something else. That's their
right.
point. And you can see most of the retail users, even big whales that are retail users, retail investors. For instance, if you know Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, he uses
Yes,
like
absolutely.
he uses like ordinary terms. Like, he says, now I have Solana, I have Ethereum, I have this, I have that, and he does not look into like down the under the shell how the things happen.
Right,
Like, why in crypto world, yes, it's true. A lot of things are useless, and I mean, people. I myself, I came from like performance performance required like background, because you asked about my background. I had like first of my 2 years after my college, I was doing like Cisco networking, and performance is the one of the important aspects there. And there's nothing wrong, like you're unable to have like useless config that like takes 1 kilobyte in space. You have to delete it. And in crypto world, it's the one of the first like software ecosystems that have a lot of like garbage code, like bad code, and there are a lot of people that came there like without engineering degree, and they already have like protocols with big TVLs, and that's why I think it's very important to illustrate the requirements, like
right.
the aspect and the reason why I have this. And in case of Uniswap, we have like very experienced guy, and
Yeah,
it's a brilliant code if you look at it. And there are other open source things, like for instance Wormhole. It has a lot of useless code, but the thing, it works. The fact why it has useless code, not useless, but over
right.
engineered
It's
code.
a lot of unnecessary code. It's funny. I,
Not
I heard
necessarily,
I heard somebody else say what you're saying actually. So
because they have a generic template for all of the applications,
yeah,
and the team behind it, uh, it also has like not a big experience in this, like in crypto world. I mean, not in crypto world, but in like how to make systems efficient. So yeah,
very
I think
interesting.
we can mention different advantages and disadvantages of approach on how you can develop certain applications.
Very good. And thank you for articulating that. This thought kind of popped into my mind when I thought about wrapped tokens the other day. What kind of came into my mind was CDOs back in the early 2000s. So collateral debt obligations, where essentially you take debt instruments and then you wrap them with additional debt instruments. And I think we can all I think we can all agree on the problems that cause for the global economy. Does the wrapped asset function like a CDO? And I guess I'm trying to use this comparison for kind of more of the finance-based crowd. But for
Yes.
me, I think about it. I understand. Like, listen, CDOs is like bad debt wrapped around more bad debt. I think at least with wrapped tokens, you're at least dealing with Bitcoin and Ethereum, which over time have proved their value. Up to this point. I kind of wanted to know what you think of that comparison. At least for the the finance based crowd.
Yeah, it's interesting topic. But yeah, let's make a comparison between like 2020 year when we had like the burst of the interest in Uniswap V2
Right.
and like a huge amount of volume and the arbitrageurs that took action into like taking profits from this. What's more important to mention, I do not see, I don't have financial background like in terms of to compare like the CDOs, but what I had like my interest and my curiosity, I also learned about this, like how CDOs work, how credit default swaps work, and
Yeah.
more importantly, CDOs they have like the chain of obligations, as far as I understand, and you cannot do these things in wrapped example because you have wrapped Ethereum. You cannot
Right.
wrap it like into something else in terms of like it has to be remain the same. Like if we have Aave, you have to put like one version of token. Like if you have wrapped Ethereum, you have only one version of wrapped Ethereum there. You cannot deposit like wrapped wormhole Ethereum there. You
Right.
cannot do it
Right.
like this. But in case of CDOs, you can do this. Like I mean, in terms of like people, they had like chains of CDOs, and one underlying asset, like the debt growth grew in value, or like short position grew in value, it faced like a cascade, and you
I
had
see what you
like
mean.
you had great debt in the situation, and it had, even though it was a regulated scenario, in terms of like Ethereum, when they have trustless and everyone in the network knows how to operate, how to interact with smart contract. If you have like trustless approach and like network and stable algorithm, you
Yeah.
have like very solid fundamental rules under it, and we did not face like uh, huge bear market.
Right.
We face like organic volume and organic competition and MEV in future, because people learned from it and they made the system better. And this didn't happen in like 2008.
Right.
And
That's a very good point too. Yeah.
you had like Morgan Stanley that allowed something to be something, and like it was not transparent, and that's why it
Right.
caused like problems.
Also, a
So
very good point as well. And taking that, let's say, a step further. So, could wrap tokens and let's say the programming, the smart contracts, could that apply into the world of NFTs? And many NFTs do use an Ethereum standard. I think it might be Ethereum 721. So I know there's a little bit of a difference there. But like for instance, could you essentially have a piece of NFT art from CryptoPunks, but the underlying, you could say, art is actually from the Bored Ape Yacht Club? so to say. Like
Interesting.
could that work technically?
Technically, yes, but like the simplest approach, it's very vulnerable. If you, for instance, take the 2020 BZX attack, what happened there is like Oracle manipulated the algorithm of position, and the BZX protocol had like the algorithm. If it doesn't have collateral, it buys back Ethereum on via market value on Uniswap, and we're regarding the price. And this phase, like it was the problem that made the attack appear, and this can happen also to example you mentioned, where you have like, for instance, a smart contract that takes NFTs, gives back some tokens that maintain the price or represent the position, like how much worth is your NFT.
Right.
uh, this thing cannot be secure without oracles. Basically, you just to make this thing work. You have to manage some oracle, or better, the network of oracles that will maintain the market value of certain NFT. Like it's more or less easy. An example you mentioned with uh, CryptoPunks, because if you don't do it this way, like a bit of centralized way, the oracles, which price you will take, because you cannot rely on Uniswap liquidity, because if you do it without oracles, this thing can be attacked via flash loans, and
Right.
basically you need to maintain the position of NFTs with oracles, and you can have the algorithm as you mentioned.
Got it. And by the way, for the audience, I just wanted to point out, Shamil was actually one of the guest speakers at the blockchain Oracle conference in Berlin, Germany, the same one I was at, and he gave a great presentation on really how oracles address a lot of these problems. So if we can kind of talk a little bit about that. So oracles effectively being a third party, not like a party, but essentially an outside, almost like application going into the blockchain to do some function. Could an oracle perhaps solve a lot of the wrap token issues? And I know people do have issues with oracles because I'm like, okay, well, that is a third party. Blockchain should be decentralized. Now you're introducing something that's kind of a creature of like Web 2. um, what is this oracle going to do with my information? People, think about these things, and I kind of wanted to know, your thoughts on how oracles can deal with this.
Yeah, uh, the question is interesting, and the oracles, they have to be. I think they can be considered as one of the best examples of like proprietary software in place, because you have like first of the first guys that achieved this were Chainlink, and they had like aggregation of price data across different sources, and I think oracles can be considered, particularly price oracles, as a workaround for different protocols. For instance, we have like on Solana, we have different lending protocols like Solend or Manga Markets that they maintain price on assets via oracles, because you cannot do it on chain. Uh, there is different like it's easy for any person to influence the price. We have
Right.
flash loans as well, and also if we do rely on other protocols, it also can be insecure. I mean, in terms of like on-chain ecosystem. But if we have like distinct oracles or varied oracle networks, it's the at the moment is the only way, and I think we have a lot of like things to be developed in this ecosystem. And conference in Berlin, we mentioned that there is a problem of standardization of oracles, And I
Right.
think you cannot standardize oracles without the application that uses it. And here we have like the problem of like adaptation. And we need to when oracles will be so generic that all applications use them, I think there'll be like a lot of space for standardization. Better
Right.
yet, we only have like Chainlink and like Switchboard and other different protocols like Peace Network on Solana that maintain price or other or aggregate data. So yeah,
Got it.
in terms of
Great.
lending markets and other applications, oracles are crucial, and you cannot build something without them.
So, for the audience, I guess it would be fair to say they are a necessary evil, as, some would say.
Yes.
Although not perfect, they are very necessary, especially in finance.
Is with other things with that we have in place like other decentralized applications, you have to manage we have to trust some protocols in this sphere.
Right.
And like I myself see that once after a year will have more protocols, and once we have standardization, it will boost the ecosystem as well. And price oracle is one of the simplest things to build. The second problem is how you maintain consensus and real, like real transparent results underneath it. Because we also the third thing we have like the problem of aggregation, and as with NFTs, if you think, oh, we have NFT, we have CryptoPunks, which price we should take, like the market price or last bid price?
Right.
It's all about the choice, I think.
Right. Very very well said. And if we could take a slight detour, could you talk a little bit more about your company, the Hardron Network? Since we're talking about the wormhole protocol and multi chains, can you talk a little bit about your company and what you're working on?
Yeah, no problem. Currently, I'm working on like solution that will maintain market making and wrapped assets in one application. Basically, it's a bridge with some additional requirements. Basically, it allows you to like prevent such things that happened with Luna. If you like one situation, if you have like Luna staked on like Terra or some centralized exchange. The second scenario is when you have like this token in the bridge, like wrapped asset version of this token. And things we like rely on and things we promise basically is that if you have some risky asset, or like if potentially if an asset will go to zero, we will save some funds of some funds in this, like the amount of tokens you've deposited. Like the things the algorithm, it works in such a way that you have uh, the token, and any token in our bridge, it maintains like a, some part of this token is in treasury. The treasury operates in like in basically it's a black box. Before the fact it will be released like in our audits, before we make an audit. The black box called Collider, it ensures that this asset maintains market value, like it prevents it from like unnecessary arbitrage. Like this is one of the ways to maintain market making. And what this gives you is all profits from arbitrage, they go back in treasury, and this delta is maintained in LP tokens. Basically, you deposit your tokens, you have LPs, and these LPs, they have more insured value, uh, rather than like having just the token without anything. And basically, it's the advantage of arbitrage and the disadvantage of impermanent loss. So it's more like complex version of bridge. and we have like already collider version, collider component. It works, but uh, the network is not released yet, and we have some choices between the fact, like rather to use L2s or to use like Solana fork. Like that's the thing I'm thinking right now.
Got it. And speaking of Solana, um, it Solana has shown a tremendous amount of potential, but I think like every other blockchain, it has its ups and downs. Some people say that eventually Ethereum will be replaced by one of these newer, I guess you could say, blockchains that seek to eliminate a lot of the traditional gas and transaction speed issues. Now, we have Ethereum too, but there are many who are of the opinion that at some point Ethereum will be obsolete, and it could be either like a Polygon or a Polkadot or a Solana that's going to be, let's say, leading the future as far as building applications and onboarding or implementing oracles. I mean, this is going to be something that enterprises are going to be going to, instead of, let's say, Ethereum. I wanted to know, as a blockchain engineer, your thoughts on Ethereum. As far as, is it here to stay, or do you think it will be replaced one day?
Uh, Answering your question, it's very important to mention the fact that you cannot like go faster like this than the speed of light. And
Sure.
talking about comparison, you cannot compare Ethereum and Solana because all the people in Twitter that compare these two networks, they don't dive into the technical
Right.
aspect under the hood. They have like tremendous differentiations. So these differentiations are so huge and so impactful that you have to maintain different designs. If you have the same application, like the same bridge, like the bridge application, you have different smart contracts and different even behavioral approach because you have different interface of communication in different networks. And I think at the moment Solana grows faster than Ethereum in terms of like dev effort, and a lot of guys like they put effort. Recently Jump Crypto announced that they have like uh, second implementation of like thin client for Solana. They want, in a nutshell, Jump Crypto is the crypto firm that's behind like all the market activity on Solana. They maintain like Serum. They interact with Serum Dex a lot, and
Right.
they are huge contributors in the Solana ecosystem. And the point they're making is that uh, you can make things faster, and Ethereum like is a huge, like it's a huge machine that it has to maintain a lot of space, and I think we'll understand who's the winner like in 5 years. And for all the people, like Solana had steady growth and steady plummet in terms of token value, and I think it's got too much attention and uh, too much like all the people that operated in the growth, like in marketing of Solana, they did too much in terms of like pouring money into this. I mean,
Right.
they did their best, but the discipline and like I think
It was
the
careless
yeah,
in
I
many
think
ways.
the amount of years you maintain this is the most important thing.
Right.
And this can be achieved only like in 5 years, I think. And I think you can. It's not. It's wrong to compare these networks, and you should not. You should not like write a circle. I mean, like you should not make them. It's hard to make them compete. I think they should grow, and both systems they need each other. I think
Right.
so, and they're interchangeable. Like I mean, you cannot. Uh, for our crypto world to grow, we need both of these things to grow. Because on one hand, we have like very like the winner of the developer ecosystem, and like 90% of developers are from Ethereum. And we have Solana, like that has one of the smartest approach to smart contracts. We have like BPF compiler for smart contract execution and very performant network. So these things they help each other, and I
Right.
think you cannot talk about winner or loser here. So I
Very
think
well
we'll get
said.
in 5 years.
Got it. Often I get this question from the audience, and it goes like this: if someone wants to be a blockchain engineer, and they're really passionate about it, they're very interested, what programming languages should they learn? What type of education should they get in this space? What kind of projects should they try to, join?
It's very good question. I think in order to achieve some goal, you have to look from the different angle, from the different perspective, even though it may be looking wrong. And I myself, uh, I think I'm lucky enough to dive into this ecosystem, having another background. And I would recommend like straight computer science, like for 1 or 2 years, and you should have a very decent knowledge of like certain algorithms and the things how compilers work. For instance, like which crypto jobs we have right now, like you can be like a smart contract engineer, you can be like audits expert or like security expert, or you can be like backend engineer. In all of these three examples, like having like performant code is one of the most important aspects. In Solidity, you have to, if you want to make smart contract faster, you need to know like assembly, and assembly is like one of the core principles of computer science. In the background, if in the on backend, you have to know some Golang or Rust.
Right.
And if you want to be like a security expert, you need to understand like the flow of program, how heap works, how stack machine works, and it's all goes into the roots of computer science. And missing them, you will not be able to like achieve like very performant job, I think. So I would start from computer science and from the fundamentals of computer science. Maybe certain algorithms might not be the first thing, but uh, understanding how operating systems work, how like the common vulnerabilities. So I think yeah, you also need to maintain your style of coding and design patterns. Also, one of
Yeah.
the crucial things to learn.
Got it. Very, very well said, and I think you listed some great starting points, foundational things for one who wants to get started in this space as well. And as a final question, for your company, the Hardron Network, what goals, what milestones do you hope to achieve this year?
Yeah, it's important to manage like a roadmap of things, and I think currently I'm also like making some open source contributions to Solana ecosystem, and particularly we want to manage like at least like 10 wrapped assets, and we want to make mostly permissioned bridge, because permissionless approach doesn't work here, and maybe we'll find some workarounds in here. But basically, in during this year, we'll have like some alpha release, and we'll show how this thing works. And I think we'll like face at least like 1 million of TVL during the before the end of this year, and like 10 of different dropped assets, and yeah, that's the milestone at the moment.
Very good. Well, Shamil, I have to say, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Very, very informative. I think we did a thorough deep dive into wrapped assets and everything in related to it as well. And very much looking forward to having you come back on in the very near future to do our second and third part of this
Yeah.
subject matter. So which I will announce on my end in the very, very near future. But I'd say for everyone out there, if you're into blockchain, if you're into Web3, you cannot ignore the fact of wrapped assets and their function in this space and where wrapped assets will end up being in the future, and also oracles as well. I think we all like to think in a perfect world, everything will be decentralized forever. To be realistic, that's not going to be the case. We're gonna
Yes.
need essentially special exceptions for a lot of this, so things can work. Whether it's finance, whether it's healthcare, or whether it's any industry. So Shamil, again, thank you very much for coming on. Especially somebody who's a very experienced blockchain engineer like yourself. I'm very thankful that you came on today and shared a lot of your expertise and insights on a lot of these things, because these things are very, very important. And all of these terms, smart contracts, the EVM, Ethereum virtual machine, wrapped assets, all of these things are going to become common, everyday, you could say, terms in our future, in our near future, and it's going to be here faster than we know it. So Shamil, again, thank you very much for coming on. This is very
Thanks for having
illuminating.
me.
I really appreciate the rich substantive knowledge you provided today. I think this was very, 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 very informative. This definitely leaves a lot to think about, and I'm very much looking forward to doing part 2 and part 3 with you soon.
Yeah, that would be great. I think you can cover like MEV and maximum extractable value in Ethereum, because it's like the very hot topic, but almost like very small amount of people talk about this. Like
Very true.
heard, I've heard some podcasts on YouTube, like with some Twitter guys, but yeah, we can also like talk about this as well.
Yes, and we'll reserve that for part 2 then.
Yeah, we can do this on part two.
We will. Anyway, appreciate everything, Shamil, and take
Thank
care. Have an awesome week, and I will be talking to you later then.
I have also very good week. Thank you,
Thank
Adam.
you.
It's been a pleasure.